Jose Mourinho has been sacked by Manchester United, and Ole Gunnar Solskjaer has been parachuted in as interim coach. I'm joined by Golf's chief correspondent, Peter Staunton, and we're going to dissect all the latest information from the past 24 hours. And it's been a bolt from the blue, hasn't it, the sacking?
It has. I know some journalists have been taking quite a lot of stick for saying that Mourinho wasn't going to be sacked and that the club were backing him. But that was the case up until they were defeated by Liverpool on Sunday. And then things happened at warp speed. We had a situation where Mourinho had the day off on Monday. He was back in London with his family. And by the time he got to Manchester on Tuesday, well, the decision to drop that axe on his neck had already been taken by Ed Woodward and all those other decision makers above Mourinho's head at Man United.
Where did it all go so pear-shaped for him?
It's pear-shaped all over the place at Man United. It's pear-shaped on and off the field. And the easiest person to sack in a situation like that is always the coach. But I think if Mourinho was honest with himself, he would say that this season has been nothing short of a disaster. On a football level, the stuff that he can control, it's been really, really poor. I'm thinking of the results that they've had against Crystal Palace, Southampton, Brighton, West Ham. I'm not talking about the Liverpool result. I'm not talking about the City results. I'm talking about times where they've really shown themselves up quite embarrassing style against the lesser lights in the team, who Pep Guardiola is putting 4 or 5 of his first team players out against and still getting a result.
For me, it kind of started with that negativity of pre-season, when they went away to the US and it was just constant moaning about the fact he didn't have a lot of key players then because they'd been playing at the World Cup. But that tone he set of the fact that I've got these young players and Alexis Sanchez has stuck with them, it carried on throughout the season, didn't it?
It did, yeah, and it was such a surprise because Mourinho loves that pre-season tour in America. He's big friends with Charlie Silitano, who runs that international Champions Cup, and it's one of his favourite things to do, to get the sun on his back, be in LA for a few weeks and really kind of get settled into his mode of working for the season. But this year it just he was trying to call players back early from their breaks after the World Cup. A lot of his players, you think of Lukaku, Fellaini, the England guys, they all went far at the World Cup. Pogba, of course, playing in the final. They all went to the very last weekend of the World Cup. He wanted them back in so he could put out competitive teams. And I remember that game that they played in the big house, as they call it, in Ann Arbor against Liverpool. And it was probably the most depressing sight for any Man United fan who would pay to watch Man United play in America. It was just a total waste of time. And Mourinho never shook himself out of that funk from the summer on. His disappointment with the players that he had on the books, his disappointment with Woodward because he couldn't get players in, and it just snowballed from there. And it was the only eventuality that could have happened.
Do you think that sort of fallout with Pogba, a very public fallout, first he stripped him of any captaincy rights, and then he started benching him, and now, by the end of his tenure, it pretty much became commonplace for Pogba to be on the bench. People didn't even start questioning it. Against Liverpool, it didn't really raise an eyebrow when he was on the bench, even though this is a player who's just won the World Cup. He's had an amazing summer, and then they fall out, don't they?
I can't really see any precedent in terms of the players that have gone for big money in the past few years to see somebody gone from sort of the flagship signing to a bench player. And it became sort of one of the key conflicts in this whole Mourinho sacking drama, because if you can't get the best football out of Paul Pogba, who's, for me, on talent alone, whatever you think about his application, on talent alone, he's the best midfielder in the Premier League. If you can't make him play well in your team, what chance have you got with the rest of them? And I think the way he used Scott McTominay as sort of an anti-Pogba, all the way back to that night in Seville last year in the Champions League, where putting McTominay onto the field in place of Paul Pogba is a total insult. It's a total insult. He's not fit to lace his shoelaces. And the only reason he got in the team was because he would do damn well what he was told, and in Mourinho's eyes, Pogba wouldn't. So it was an attitude thing. And if you're picking players, if you're not able to overcome what you perceive to be attitude problems in your best players, and you're picking only your loyal guys, you're putting yourself at a huge disadvantage, because you're not putting the best team out. And if you're not putting your best team out every week, you're not going to win. And
in terms, obviously, we've talked about the tactics, we've talked about man management. He definitely made some failures there. But does he shoulder a lot of the blame for what Ed Woodward has done in terms of the summer and the lack of transfer signings and ambition? There's
some things sort of squeaking out now that Mourinho's gone. That in recruitment meetings, for example, when they had a list of targets drawn up, he would introduce a new name at the meeting that hadn't previously been discussed.
Mourinho
would,
right,
yeah.
Okay.
And one of those names that he brought up was Harry Maguire. When he was asking why did Man United have 50 scouts and not one of them identified Harry Maguire when he was playing for Hull. That was before Leicester bought him for, I think, maybe 15 to 20 million. And then the price that Leicester quoting Man United, of course, is 75 million. So he wasn't working in tandem with whatever recruitment system was there at Man United, and he was throwing names out there, and it was altogether too late in the day to get deals done. Toby Alderweireld, Jerome Boateng, Diego Godin, we mentioned Maguire. You can't go in for these players and expect the deal to be done by the start of the season when you're going in for them in July. It doesn't make any sense what Mourinho was doing. And if you look, 6 months down the line, he's been sacked. You would have to say that Woodward did the right thing to resist any more signings. Because you look at Fred, you look at Alexis Sanchez, you look at Henrik Mkhitaryan, he's gone, you look at Eric Bailly, you look at Lindelof. How many of these guys are going to be key players for Man United going forward? How many? I would say none.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to say, obviously. I think viewing the Mourinho, certainly this season of Mourinho, it's hard to do without Mourinho being there. I think what we might see in the second half of the season with Solskjaer there is some of these players who perhaps came in, didn't quite gel with Mourinho, might improve. I mean, it's hard to really know.
Well, Solskjaer had some time with Pogba when he was coaching Man United before, so there is sort of maybe a pre-existing working relationship there. I just don't see the sense in hiring Ole Gunnar Solskjaer. I don't see it at all. I mean, look, every team that sacks their manager gets a bounce. It gives people sort of a boost that, you know, the fug of the old regime is gone, and that would certainly be true for Mourinho because he didn't have a lot of allies left at Man United. So that will give everyone a little boost. Plus, they've got 3. Look, I'm sorry to say it for any fans that might be watching, they've got 3 easy games coming up. Yeah. They've got Cardiff, Huddersfield on Boxing Day, and then they've got Bournemouth.
And Newcastle after that.
And Newcastle after that. So if they don't get 12 points out of 12 then there's something beyond Mourinho on the football side wrong. But if they come out of that with 12 points, you know, all of a sudden everything's looking rosy in the garden. But I just don't see what Solskjaer is going to bring them.
See, for me, I actually quite like it. I think it's a pure fan appeasement. So they've obviously brought him in. They know that the fans are going to love him. He's a club legend. He was there for 11 years, I think it was. You know, no one's going to complain about that. There's also a bit of a lower expectation with these club legends when they come into management. People are willing to accept a little bit less. And you know, what could happen? Like the worst case scenario is they plummet down the table. But with the players they've got on their books, you'd say that's pretty hard.
I wouldn't be so sure. I honestly wouldn't be so sure. He's managed in Norway. He won 2 titles there in his first spell at Molde. But what splits up his 2 spells at Molde is that failure in the Premier League with Cardiff City. I think he won 3 matches out of 20. Finished rock bottom. They were a disaster. He wasn't capable of managing in the Premier League back then. I'd like to know what's different now than then. I just don't think he's got enough expertise to be coaching a club the size, the expectations of Manchester United. And what if it is a case if they take no points from 12? Where did they go then? Get a caretaker to replace the caretaker until the end of the season? I mean, it's such a risky decision.
But the sense of it is temporary. I think they can just, you know, get rid. It's not like they've given him a 3-year contract and he's unproven. As you said, he doesn't have that experience or the sort of CV really to be into this role, but it gives them time to essentially find a long-term replacement because, as you say, it's a loan, and the fans are going to be happy. You know, a lot of fans I think they never really turned on Mourinho. It was never like they were booing him at Old Trafford and begging him.
No, they never did. That's true.
You know, but there was an obvious negativity there, and they stuck by him. But you know, I don't think they would have been happy with the fact that there's so many points off Man City at this point.
Well, I just think that if you've got a club who's driving, let's say, the biggest revenues in the world, with all those trophies, with that stadium, with that fan base, and you told him at the start of the season you're going to take Ole Gunnar Solskjaer on loan from the team that finished second in Norway for the second half of the season, and he's going to be joined by Mike Phelan, who's coming in from the Central Coast Mariners, who made the worst start in the history of Australian football, who were trying to sign Usain Bolt up front, and he's only on loan as well.
Yeah.
That, to me, screams shambles, absolute shambles.
I think it's a shambles. I'm not disagreeing with you there, but for me, I think that they'll finish the top 6. I think that irrespective, do you doubt that?
I don't think they'll finish top 6.
Do you not?
No, I don't think the squad is good enough.
Everton are better than them.
I don't think who's going to sign the players in January. If they need new players, who's going to sign the players?
I can't see them signing anyone in January.
Can you see Solskjaer having control of the transfer budget at Man United or Mike Phelan?
But that's why they brought him in, isn't it? They brought him in because he's going to just be happy to be there, and he will be delighted. He wouldn't have expected to be managing his beloved club that he played for 11 years.
He thinks he's like Charlie and his granddad after getting the golden ticket.
Yeah.
He can't believe his luck he's managing Man United.
Yeah.
And for me, look, the disappointing thing, this for me goes back to Ferguson, right? Because Ferguson, he was a brilliant manager for Man United, but he left nothing there. It was hand-powered, the whole thing, because when he left, total vacuum, nothing left. And now they're trying to, pick up the pieces of the ancient regime of Alex Ferguson and sort of put something together from it by having an iconic player, Solskjaer, who won them the Champions League 20 years ago, and Mike Phelan, who was probably his best number 2. What's the key ingredient missing there? What's the key ingredient missing? You're missing Sir Alex Ferguson. He's the one who held the whole damn thing together for 26 years. What can these two conjure?
Potentially, yeah. I mean, for me, because it is only 6 months, it isn't a big risk because they have the fans there that are going to back them. I think that if they'd given him a 3-year contract, I'd be like, what on earth are you doing? But at least this way, they put someone into the role who's just going to do what they want, who potentially will get some okay results. I mean, we'll see, time will tell on that. And then in that time, they can spend that sort of 6-7 months to try and find that long-term replacement.
Well, look, it's not going to be any secret that the names that they're going to go in for next summer. We know Mauricio Pochettino is going to be among the top targets. Antonio Conte would probably take the job, and for me would be the best appointment they could make. Zinedine Zidane is going to come back into the frame because Woodward seems to carry a torch for him for whatever reason. And if it is Pochettino, well, look, you're asking for a risk there because he's not won any trophies at Spurs. I don't think he's only won any trophies in his managerial career. How will he handle that step up in expectation to a club like Man United, where people are like, look at what he's got to work with at Spurs. He's doing a great job with the wages, with the transfer fees, all that kind of thing. What when he has all that thing in his favour and it doesn't go well for him? What next?
So you think Conte is the best choice?
Conte is absolutely the best choice for Man United. Yes, I would move heaven and earth. If I were Ed Woodward, I'd move heaven and earth to get Conte because you have. He swept up the pieces of the Mourinho regime before and actually won Chelsea the league. Yeah, he's the type of guy that can go in, he can identify the troublesome personalities in the first team squad and exclude them, because he did that with David Luiz. And Luiz doesn't have a bad attitude, he's a great player, but he didn't suit personality-wise what Conte wanted. And Conte's not afraid of that. He'll go in, clean things up, get the team functioning to a high level and probably have them pretty close to winning a league title, because that's what he deals in. He's a winner. He proved that at Juve, proved that at Chelsea. Conte for me would be the man, and not Pochettino.
So he's the best choice. Who would you say would be the most likely choice?
Probably Pochettino.
Yeah.
I would say Pochettino. Yeah. They're going to have to hire somebody big. You can't have an Eddie Howe going in here. You just can't. And you can't have somebody, a foreign coach coming over who's unproven, and people going, do we really need this? They want somebody who they think can hit the ground running, who fans know all about, who the club know all about, and I think Pochettino fits the bill in that regard. Plus, he might be able to attract a few of Tottenham's players north. But then again,
the likes of Harry Kane.
Yeah, the likes of Harry Kane. He was linked with Man United before, and I remember writing a piece about Harry Kane saying, why would he leave Spurs to go to Man United? Why? My feelings haven't changed yet about that, and they haven't changed in that regard about Pochettino either. I think he's onto a good thing at Tottenham. They're about to move into the next echelon, I think, Tottenham Hotspur.
We've got the new stadium eventually coming.
Yeah, I would, if I were Poch, I would stick for another little while with Tottenham and see where they're going.
I know you're not a fan of Solskjaer, as you said, but if he managed to get them into the top 4, do you think they would offer him that position, or they will go external?
I think that if they got top 4, no. If the top 4 and they win the Champions League, then I think you're into a Roberto Di Matteo situation where you're almost obligated to ask him to stay in the job. Yeah. But I just can't see it. I can't see them finishing top 2. I can't see them finishing top 4. I can't see them finishing top 6, to be honest with you. And I think they're going to get battered by PSG over 2 legs. And whatever, sort of festive goodwill people feel about this, Solskjaer is back. Give it 6 weeks and people will have to be smacked around the face with a wet fish to be confronted with reality, what's happening at Man United. The whole place is a meltdown. It's a meltdown.
But it's the perfect time for a manager to come in. You couldn't have asked for a better run of fixtures. And then after that 4 games as well, the 4 easy games, they've got an FA Cup fixture as well.
Exactly,
the whole thing is just set up for a new manager to come in and to have a bit of an easy ride. But as you say, it could go the other way, and it could all be horribly wrong.
Would Mourinho not get 12 points in those fixtures?
Yeah, and I think that's why they did it now. Because if they left it till after those 4
and
fixtures,
he recovers,
then you've got that back to that point where you can't really get rid of him at that point. Whereas you've just lost to a massive rival, Liverpool, who are going to the title race.
If you go back to October when they beat Newcastle, I still maintain, I think if they'd lost that game, they were 2-0 down. If they lost that game, he was gone then, because you're going into the international break. There were stories out there at the time that Woodward was ready to pull the trigger that weekend no matter what happened. I think he was gone then, and I think this has been a stay of execution up to the middle of December.
They were just waiting for the right time.
Waiting for the right time, and now after the defeat to Liverpool, the way he kind of surrendered, and look, the way he praised Andrew Robertson compared to how he criticised Luke Shaw for almost 2 years, there must be people at Man United thinking, why doesn't he ever talk about our players the way he talks about other people's players?
It's weird, because you think back to his days at Chelsea in his first stint at least, he never would have gone like that with his players. Like, he was always backing them to a hill, sometimes bizarrely. And now it's very much like he's become kind of bitter and cynical about the whole thing, and he's much more willing to go 2-foot on his own players. I mean, look at Luke Shaw, the way he dealt with him for so long.
It's the younger players. He doesn't know how to deal with this new generation of players. Okay, we've got kids who've grown up in academies. They've never been criticised. They don't clean boots. They don't clean toilets. They're treated like emperors from a very, very young age. And they're costing it. And Mourinho doesn't know how to deal with personalities like that. So once upon a time, if you shocked somebody by dropping them or shocked somebody by criticising them in front of the team, that would get a positive reaction. But now it gets people phoning their agents saying, get me out of here, I don't want to play for this guy anymore. That's why they've activated De Gea's contract. That's why they've activated Martial's contract, because that's all they can do. Keep them for another year, because there's no guarantee they're going to sign a new contract if Mourinho's around. That's what they needed to protect in the end. Because if Mourinho is discouraging people from wanting to play for Man United, you have to remove him.
Burn all the bridges, yeah. In terms of the players that they need to sign to get them back to the top level, we talked about the managers. Who do you think, what are the weak areas right now to get them up to the point where City and Liverpool are in the Premier League?
To get to where City are, I think they're probably, I would say they're probably about 400 million away from, they need to spend about 400 million to get to City's
What
level.
do they need to improve? The defence, obviously.
Well, I think they'll need a new goalkeeper because the guy's going to want to go. I mean, what's he doing hanging around Man United? He's won one league title. His career's passing him by. Why doesn't he just go to Real Madrid and get it over and done with? Okay, so I think they're going to need a new goalkeeper. They're going to need an entire back four and find buyers for
millions and
for
millions.
the rest of them. Maybe Luke Shaw can stay. They need a controlling midfielder because Fred isn't it. Andres Pereira might be it, but he hasn't had the games. He hasn't had the time to prove himself. And they could probably still do with a right winger. So all in all, I think if teams are looking at Man United coming and they know what kind of players they need.
Do you think they need another striker as well? I mean, Lukaku's kind of gone off the boil a little bit this year. He doesn't seem quite as fit.
Well, I think Solskjaer knows how to play up front. So on that front, I think I'd give Lukaku the benefit of the doubt, because when he's playing with Belgium, for example, and he's got more attacking players around him than he does at Man United, he scores freely. He scored, I think he's like 40 goals in 40 games or something like that under Roberto Martinez, because there's more attacking players around him.
He had a great World Cup.
He had a great World Cup.
That's why it's so strange that he's come into the season and he's just been completely off the world.
Jaded, absolutely jaded. But he's the type of guy who he applies finishes. You know, he's a striker to be serviced. He's not a guy to win headers or play with his back to goal. You need to get the team up the pitch, pull it back to him, and he'll score the goals. I think, you know, to score that number of goals, more than 100 Premier League goals by the age of 25, he's irreproachable. For me, he's irreproachable. Lukaku's not the problem. Lukaku's not the problem on the football front. But that doesn't mean that United don't have to go and furnish this team with about 400 million worth of signings. They're miles off.
What about Pogba? Do you see him staying now that Mourinho's gone?
It's going to be his choice, isn't it? I think they've staved off the immediate threat of him down in tools and wanting to go in January. But also, who's going to pay that money for Pogba? Has he shown? But has he shown since 2016? Has he shown that he's worth 100 million for Man United? Absolutely not. PSG, you know, they've got FFP to deal with. They might have to get rid of Neymar or Mbappe before this year is out. So I don't think they'll be looking at 100 million. That's why they're trying so hard to renew Adrien Rabiot. Barcelona, again, doesn't scream Barcelona player to me. Certainly not at the price tag, because they're right at the top of their wage structure as well.
It's hard to see anyone in Serie A going for him or Bayern, is it?
No, I would say that Pogba should stay put till the summer, get his head down, and keep his
prove himself.
Keep his value. Yeah.
We'll wrap up there. Let us know in the comment section what you make of Jose's sacking, Solskjaer's hiring, and who United should try and sign in 2019. Hit the subscribe button and the bell icon to get all the latest Man United news and so much more direct from goal.